Okay, so this is part 3 of the Team Losi 22.4 build series. As you can see from part 2, I finished the front and rear suspension arms and shock tower assemblies. So the entire drivetrain is complete. You know, the universals are attached and everything. So let me go through a little bit on some comments I had. Bag D was for the front and bag E was for the rear. So on the front, you have these aluminum 15-degree caster blocks. They're pretty nice. You do have to use thread lock to mount the kingpins into the caster block through the arms and through the steering knuckle, and the instruction manual does tell you to do so, and they do provide you with a significant amount of blue thread lock, which is very nice. Also, the wheel hex here that comes in bag E is a 12mm hex, but in one of the other bags that gives you all the parts you need for adjusting anti-squat and belt tension and everything, they do provide you with 10mm wheel hexes if you want to use those. For example, if you have B44 rims or DB01 rims, those should fit right on with the 10mm hex. The way they mount, as with most wheel hexes, is you put the hex on first with the indentation facing towards the outside, and then you put a drive pin through the hex and through the wheel axle. The drive pin, it does not extend the full length of the wheel hex. I imagine that's because they also want to make this, they want to use one drive pin that'll fit both the 12 and the 10mm wheel hex. So if you were to use a 10mm wheel hex, that drive pin would run the full 10mm length of that wheel hex. It is a very tight fit for the wheel hex, so if for whatever reason you have to take this out, it may be cumbersome. But we'll see in the event that I have to take it out. Hopefully I don't break the steering knuckle and end up having to take this out, but we'll see how that goes. The front and rear roll center adjustments are on these nice aluminum chunks here. That's for the front. This is for the rear. And in the instructions, well, I mean, it's a minor issue, but, you know, they tell you where to mount, what the standard setup is for the inner ball studs, but they generally tell you to put those ball studs on after you've already mounted this block piece. And when you go to put in the ball stud on this side, it's a little bit cumbersome because you have this part of the gearbox in the way. So instead of using your hex driver to drive the ball stud in, you need maybe pliers or something like that, or an angled hex driver. So it's just a good idea to mount these, look ahead in the manual to see where they should mount as a baseline setup, and mount those before you actually mount this aluminum unit here, okay? Just a small little tip. Let's see, is there anything on the underside that I want to point out? Not in particular. Oh, right, okay. So in the first, I guess, generation or version of the 22.4, let me go back a few steps here. It would be here. The front arms used to mount a little differently. So they had this inner hinge pin with a notch inside the inner hinge pin. And then on the next step, when you mount the arm, you would run a set screw through the bulkhead to mate against this notch to hold this hinge pin in place. And what was happening is that on medium to hard impacts, the arm would snap, but the hinge pin itself would also snap along this notch because that notch is a weak point. So what Team Losi did with the newer 22.4s is they included solid hinge pins that are threaded on one side. So you can see here, it's basically like a shock shaft. So there's a 2mm nut driver hex on one side, or hex driver hex on one side, and it's a standard lockdown on the other side, and you just lock it in that way. So that way you have a solid hinge pin that's stronger and it's less likely to break. The only thing is, in the manual, they don't tell you about that update. They don't include, like, maybe an insert or something like that to show you that indeed you do have these updated parts. Otherwise, if you don't know about this, you're going to spend forever searching through parts bag D for this hinge pin that does not exist. It's a different hinge pin on the newer kits. So bear that in mind. Let's see. other things about the front. It went together pretty well. The turnbuckles are rather beefy, and it did take a fair amount of effort to thread the ball studs, or the ball cups, sorry, onto the turnbuckles. You're supposed to use a little bit of black grease on the threads. That certainly helps, but to initiate the threading, just to get it to start threading, for whatever reason, it was a little more difficult than on basically any other type of turnbuckle I've used, like an associated turnbuckle or a Yokomo turnbuckle or Tamiya turnbuckle. For whatever reason, maybe because these are higher diameter and maybe the thread itself is a little more fine, I don't know. But it was more difficult to get the threading started. So you may have a little bit of trouble there, but it's not too big a deal. Let's see. Okay, so everything on there went together just fine. Okay, so going to the rear was more or less the same as the front. There were a few differences. So here, for example, you have this sort of three pieces, an aluminum piece here, a plastic piece here, and a plastic insert. And these are all part of adjusting your anti-squat. So if we go over to here, so it's this assembly right here, okay? So these two pieces you don't change, and it's this piece right here that you would use to adjust the anti-squat. So this, for example, says 3LL, and that means 3 degrees anti-squat. I believe it's left-hand side low roll center. And then they have 3RL or 3LR, something like that. That's for the right-hand side. And then they have other adjustments. Instead of having an L at the end, they'll have an H. Let me see if I can just pull that up real quick. Here. Right, they have an L and an H, and this is for high roll center. I haven't actually looked at these parts to see if the actual parts themselves are a slightly different shape, and if so, how. But apparently, I guess if you want to either use high roll center, you go to these guys. If you want to use low roll center, you go to these guys. I have to look a little more into that. But that is interesting. The other thing is the way the rear arms mount. It's a little different than the front arms. On the inside hinge pins, you have these little sort of bushings that you use at the ends of the hinge pin. And the bushings are plastic, and they're closed off at one end. And this is kind of similar to what you would see in a Kyosho Laser or Tamiya DB01. In the Kyosho Laser, I believe these pieces were metal. Here they're plastic. I was never too crazy about this kind of a setup. I never quite understood why you would bother doing this, and I have said that on multiple occasions in other videos. But nevertheless, that's how this mounts, and we'll see how the plastic bushings wear. I'm not exactly sure how long those are going to last. Let's see. And this spacer here is plastic, and all the spacers you use here to adjust your wheelbase, those are all plastic. And I believe that's most of it. After that, you just put on the rear shock tower and the wing mount, and then you're all set. So that's where we are right now. I did just kind of run, with my fingers to see if I can force, the drivetrain to move, just to see how tight it is, and it does feel pretty tight. So once this car is fully built without the motor on, if you just place the car on the ground and you just roll it across the ground, I don't think it will roll very far. I think there's a lot of resistance right now in the drivetrain, and it needs to break in. So I am a little concerned that whatever motor I put in here is going to run very hot, and that I may end up puffing my batteries. I hope I don't. But we'll see how that goes. The next step is to build the shocks and mount the shocks. And after that, it's mostly complete. Then you just do little things like, the battery posts and start mounting the electronics. So we'll take it from there. So I'll basically build the shocks and maybe get some of these other steps out of the way and make another video. I'm pretty sure that's it for now. So thanks for watching.